Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. My name is Maureen Wanyoni. Welcome to the ELF live stream. We will be discussing a topic on civic engagement in the electoral process. We have been looking forward to engaging with you on this process. Given the times we are in the country, we are hoping that this conversation will be insightful to you, and it will also allow you as a Kenyan to be able to participate in the civic discourse that we are engaging in. I'm joined by a panel of 4 civic actors, 4 influencers in their space, and I will allow them to just introduce themselves so that we can begin this session. I will start from my left.
Thank you very much, Maureen. My name is Peter Mwangangimani, President, Technical University of Kenya, and also Chairperson of Kenya University President Association. I am glad to join ELF.
Thank you, Peter.
Hello everyone, thanks for joining us and thanks for having me. Ruth Bolo is my name. I am currently the Kano Youth Congress National Coordinator. I am also the Chairperson of the International Relations Committee of Young Democratic Union of Africa. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me on board. I'm Vimal Shah, and currently the hat I'm wearing is, I'm chairing Kenya Daima here. Thank you.
Thank you, Vimal.
All right, thank you very much. My name is Emmanuel, or popularly known as MC Neb. I'm an entertainer, and also I have keen interest in leadership and governance, and aspiring MCA Harambee Ward.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This discussion for us is important in this period of time because we know that elections form a bigger part of how this country runs. And so understanding the electoral process for me is an important way of how this discussion can begin. So Peter, in your perspective, when does the election process begin for you?
Okay, thank you, Maureen. When does the election process begin for me?
Yes, or the electoral process.
The electoral process begins instantly after finishing elections. After swearing in the current leaders, electoral process begins. Why? Because you have seen so many leaders, from the point they lost, they started working from there and then to make sure that they don't lose again. Then those who are elected, they work in their best interest to make sure they retain the seats if they really wish to retain them.
Okay, interesting perspective. Ruth, in your perspective, when does the electoral process in Kenya begin?
Now there are 3 things here. There's the electoral process, there's the governance process, and there is the campaign process. In Kenya, we finish one election and begin campaigning the next day. You're literally sworn in today and the next day you begin campaigning for the next elections 5 years away. But the electoral process really for me begins after the elections. Once we are now doing the post-mortem of the just concluded elections, that is where it begins. Because remember, this process is not just done by the government institution or by IBC. It is also done by the political parties, which play a key role in this electoral process. That is the nomination, the training of the candidates who will be there in the next election, and all those things. So really for me, the electoral process begins at the point where we are doing we are reviewing the election process that we have just concluded.
All right, okay. Mr. Vimal.
I think, Maureen, your question is loaded because there are many perspectives you look at. If you look at the official process, it probably begins 3 to 4 months before the actual election date. But the reality means that the electoral process in terms of campaigning and juxtapositioning people where they want to be next term or whatever never starts and never stops. It just continues in Kenya. We have this all the time, and people are positioning themselves. Even if they don't want to win, they position themselves and I'll be president next time. So I think it just never starts or stops.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Personally, I think, first it's just a question as well. So how do we mark an exam we've not sat for? So we start a process before even completing the term of, the governance system that has been put in place. But according to the stipulated timelines, because we have these bodies like the IBC, for instance, the 27th of January, that's when they announced this is an electioneering period. So for me, as an aspirant, that is something I was really looking forward to, because now that is a stipulated timeline that has been set by the body in charge of elections.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I'm sure sitting here, all of us have participated in at least one election or another. And I will start with Mr. Vimal. What has been your experience in the elections you have participated in? Because we are looking at aspects around civic engagement, we are looking at aspects around how it has changed over time, and whether are we going towards the left or the right? Are we making right decisions going forward, or are we over time now participating in elections in manners that would jeopardize the future for this country?
So I think I've probably participated in 8 elections so far, and it's changed substantially from when it used to be a one-party country, and Kanu was. I think there was not much of electioneering. And then, of course, 1992 came, and we started having multi-partyism, and that's when the beginning of the process started off in a big way. But still, despite that, I think when the government changed hands from President Moi to President Kibaki, I think that's when we started seeing a lot more activity, a lot more parties coming up, and now I don't know, there are probably about 100 parties, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think overall that process has changed substantially. It used to be far different in the past. People just thought it's fait accompli, nothing to be done, nothing will change. And I think we've seen in the last 4 elections, and things do change. People come, and the public is now far more aware. They actually sweep out, I would not say throw out, but sweep them out, and 70% people change. And that's the change that's happened. So I think that substantially we've changed a lot. Public awareness is far bigger. Now people are judging based on merits and demerits rather than just partyism. And I think that's going to change in the next elections going forward.
All right, thank you. Ruth, I can see you.
Yeah. I'm planning to just touch on what he said. I think I beg to differ with him slightly. I've not participated in more than 5 elections, definitely not 8. But I want to compare these particular elections to the last elections in 2013. Number one, in these particular elections, we have what seems to be a generational conversation in 2 ways. One, there's a lot of voter apathy. We have had a voter registration extended twice, and still the only total number of voters, of new voters, is about 1.03 million. That's a very insignificant number if you cascade it down to the ward level. It means in the different wards across the country, you have less than 200 more members. Whereas if you look at the number, if you look at the census that was done, you have more than 200 new people over 18 and above. So that should tell us something. But secondly, there is, if you look at the elected members of parliament, or rather the aspirants for this particular election, we have a lot of new young people that are vying, and we have a lot of, for lack of a better word, old guards that are then all going for the same position. So if you find in some counties you have about 27 aspirants going with the same ticket for the same position. So out of these 27, of course only one is going to get it. The other 26 who've been in the political field for about 10 years plus, then what happens to them? And those positions that they have left here at the bottom then get occupied by new people. And still, these same young people that are supposed to vote in their, their age group are not there. And so in terms of voter sensitization, I think number one, people are aware that there is some sort of process that is going on, but we have a gap, or we have a group of people that just don't feel it's important. Okay. Maybe because they feel like it's not going to change, and because we've had a lot of stakeholders that are saying, it doesn't matter what you do, there's some sort of problem in IEBC. Okay. You've had major stakeholders in the political space saying, we know what we did in 2017, and it leaves a lot of questions. As a voter, I'm asking myself, what did you do in 2017? Okay, does it mean my vote will not count? Okay. So I think, and even if you look at the programs, in 2017 we had, and even in the previous, in 2010 when the 2010 constitution was being done, we had a lot of programs that were really just showing people, this is what is in it for you, this is what needs to be done, this is the process. Yeah. You can wake up early, this is your polling station. But now,
yeah, before I lose out on voter apathy, I'd like to know, Mweshimiwa Neb, who is voting for you if young people are not registering to join, to become voters? How are you mobilizing? What is the conversation on ground?
Well, number one, she's talked about having over 20-something aspirants. So in my ward, we have 22 people who want to be MCA across the divide. But you see, that tells you, and most of these people, I think 80% are young people. So personally, the approach I'm taking, you see, you are not a leader for the young people. You are a leader for everyone, because we've had even the older leaders who have a heart for the young people. So I'm not selling myself as a leader for the youth, but I'm also sensitizing the youth on the importance of, taking up their civic duty. For instance, what I was doing, I was actually going and taking them to that registration place, because most of them are not interested. So the stakeholders here are complaining that the young people are not registering, but where are these young people? These young people are on TikTok and Instagram. You can just check the IBC page on Instagram. Dormant. A very dormant page. So that's where we have the young people. IBC didn't have a TikTok account. That's where everyone, all the big brands, big corporates are on TikTok. So some people seated somewhere in a boardroom think we want to do the continuous voter registration, but where are these young people?
Okay.
They would have just even gotten the influencers, because they spent a lot of money. They got a lot of money, some billions, to do the registration. Just take 2 or 3 influencers, let them do the dances. The young people are just, I have my vote. And you'll see, people would have actually gone to get those voter registration cards. Yeah.
Okay. President to the university. What's happening? Are the university students registering as voters? I mean, what's going on?
First of all, I would like to say that the youths have lost interest in elections. Reason, they have lost interest in election, and that vigor in election. Reason one is such kind of sentiments. My partner here said that we know what we did. You see, such kind of a statement prints something which is very sensitive in a youth's mind. So you might think you are wooing us to voting in a certain way, but ideally you are really taking us away from you. So yes, we have had sensitizations and all that mass voter registrations, but really, why are we not capturing the bigger numbers we were targeting? Reason one is that Emmanuel has just mentioned very well, that youths are not, currently youths are now switching minds around the media, around the social media platforms. If you're really talking of bringing youth on board, then you are sitting on a boardroom, then coming on with BVR kids. I realized in my university after 1 week that there was BVR kids within the university. After 1 week, and I'm the president. So that tells you that we need to improve. And one way we can improve is to incorporate these youths in those boardrooms. Those boardrooms, incorporate those youths there so that they can also share their minds with you. You see, the whole, for the sake of this discussion, for the whole all people, they think they have the best. And the youths also think they have the best. So the best way to bring these people together and have the best hybrid solution of this is incorporate all of us in those boardrooms so that we can bring these ideas and all these where we are. Where can you get us? Emmanuel has mentioned where can you get us? You can get us on TikTok, you can get us on Facebook, you can get us on IG, Instagram. So if you can invest very well. And in fact, this morning I had a conversation with one of my juniors in the leadership of the University of Kenya. And he was telling me that for those politicians who have invested a lot in the social media space, they will win this coming election. Right. Reason being, most of the voters are the youth. And where are the youths? They are in those social media platforms.
Okay. My debate with that usually is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, will a young person wake up in the morning to go and queue, irrespective of whether you are on social media 24 hours? What will be the motivation for them to wake up in the morning and queue? And in that context, in the context of in terms of what is trying to do, Mr. Abdul, maybe you could tell us, giving perspective to this conversation, how then do we ensure that the young people know it's a responsibility of their own to participate in elections like this?
Excellent question, Maureen. I think the issue is this, right? If I go and vote, I am making a stand. If I don't go out and vote and I stay Yao, I'm still making a stand, right? And I've got to take responsibility for that to say, if I didn't go, and I didn't vote, I took a stand that let whatever comes, let it come. And therefore, that's the wrong stand to take. It's better you actually go and say, whoever comes in, I'm not attached to the results, but I'm attached to the process. I will vote. And then when you start that process, I will vote, you then have to screen and say, how many people are standing, who is standing, and then comes your discriminative mind of saying, who is good for me, who is good for us, who's going to do the right thing. You get activated there. If you don't do that and you say, I'm apathetic, like you said, Ruth, if we're all apathetic, let it happen. This is something, let me tell you one thing, the secret, a lot of the old guard would want that to happen. They don't want you to vote. As youth, they would rather have you out there because, you know what, I need to recycle myself all the time and I need to come back. Whereas if youth come in, if Emmanuel becomes an MCA and he buds and becomes a big guy later on, I am threatened because this is a new wave and this is something that people talk about. When somebody says that we will do what we did, right, they don't mean it sometimes. And let me tell you, sorry to say this, with due respect to politicians, they make statements which they don't really trust or believe in, but they make it so that they influence you in the wrong direction. My request would be to say, all the youth, stand up for yourself and say, ni wajibu wangu, ni wajibu yangu, ni wajibu wetu. And the minute we say that, ni haki yetu pia. It is our right to go and vote, make a stand, take a stand. Right or wrong, it's your own decision. I'm not saying which party to go for, any party you go for, but then you will start saying, now I'm making a stand. I think this is where we need to stand up and say, it's my country, where I'm going to stand up, I'm going to make a difference here.
All right, I feel like we almost concluded this conversation. But then Ruth, does your vote count?
Absolutely. I think just to add on to what Mr. Vimalia has said, number one, there's that euphoria that comes when you have the mic and you're in a rally. It's like when you are taking your child a video at home and tell them, okay, the camera is on, the stage is yours. That they go all out, you know, they begin to do, you know, things that even you haven't seen because of the excitement. And so like he's saying, yes, it may just come out because of the euphoria, but there's an impact it has. However, there's a quote that says, bad leaders are voted in by good people that don't vote. And it's because if you who believes in me as a good leader are a good person and you decide you're not going to vote, then my opponent who is not a very responsible leader goes in, because majority of my leaders who have got the same sort of thinking as me will not vote, and so the ripple effect goes. But the problem is bigger than just sensitization in the marketing bit of it, because going around the country the past couple of months you realize a lot of people don't have IDs. And it's not just young people. But when you begin to have that conversation with them, and their mind opens up and says, okay, so I really need to get this process before the second deadline comes. Not because of anything, but because how will I be able to raise my voice and ask, why didn't you hold a public participation forum if I didn't vote? Because they then begin to understand that you have that authority in you to be able to ask certain questions, when at the back of your mind you can proudly say, I voted. But most importantly, when you see, I like what Daima is doing in terms of a multi-stakeholder approach, because then what begins to happen is, I as an employer, when I see you who is a key figure in my industry, has one, voted, or two, given your employees some allowance, even if it's in shifts, to go and vote, then there's some type of way I feel, and I'm also, you know, I'm also pushed to ensure that you vote. In fact, I remember in 2017, there's some, there's some organizations that will tell you, please don't come back to the office the next day if you don't have a photo of your finger. Don't come back. If you need to come with it physically, don't wash your hand for me to see. And you know, there's a certain push that gives you, because then it makes you sit and say, okay, since I have to do this thing, I might as well do it right. I might as well actually see the kind of quality, the quality of leaders that are there. So yes, your vote counts. But what will not count is you not voting and heckling or complaining afterwards.
All right. Thank you so much for that insight. Peter.
Yes.
There's a decline, there's a mistrust in institutions, in government. There's a lot of conversation around young people are a bit disillusioned. Where you sit now, what are the creative ways of getting to young people in your space? For example, as a student leader in the university, we know these are influencers in their space back at home. If you're in Tuk University and you come from Webuye, where I come from, anything you say counts. Almost as if I just said, oh my goodness, this person is a good person, people believe me more because I have gone to school and I understand what happens in this country, maybe more than them. So how can we use that influence going forward, maybe?
Maureen, thank you for that question. You have asked a very good question. First of all, before tackling your question, I would like to just correct our electoral bodies. Those electoral bodies, we need integrity in those electoral bodies. We need integrity. Yeah, let me come back to your question. How can we utilize the qualities or the gifts that we have been gifted as youths? Yeah, we have so many youths venturing in so many platforms, not really platforms for enjoyment or what, but we have youths doing poems who are very influential. We have youths who are dancers who are also influential, they are following. We have youths who can do public speaking very well. I think these talents, we need to utilize them amongst others. We need to utilize them in which way? If you come to university, don't just come and say, I would like to speak to student leaders. Student leaders, they might be influential in their own way, but there are people who make those student leaders. I can tell you for sure, I am a president of a university, but I didn't make myself a president. I utilize the talents that students have so that I can maneuver and get to that position. So when you come to me, I might mislead you. So when you come to me, come and tell me, Peter Mani, I know you are the president of this university. Tell me, which are the criteria you used to get to this position? Who are the people who were around you that time? So that we can bring them on board, help us in also influencing the society towards this direction. But I would like to agree with Vimal and Ruth 100%. Why? Because yes, Vimal has just well said that the whole people, they will never want a youth to be elevated or to get from where he is now. If you see in the political space currently, the youths are somewhere below where they are being put by the political class. We are being told that you are the masses, you are the powerful, you are what, you are this, you are that. But ideally, really, do you really believe that you as a youth, I know you will tend to align yourself as a youth. So as a youth, do you really believe in what you have been taught? That you make the masses, you make this, you make that. So going forward, let us accept first, we have been deceived. We have been we have been lied to. Let us accept where we are first. Emmanuel has just said clearly that where we are, we need to cut across. Let us not employ the old plans and the old strategies that our forefathers used.
Okay.
Those strategies are outdated right now.
Okay.
The strategies that are there use the youths. In which way? Use the youths through their talents, through their positions, through their influencing capacity. You can find a youth who is influential, but there is a certain perspective you should explain. You should tell him to use as an approach towards.
Okay.
Yeah.
Listening to you, I'd like to ask Mheshimiwa here in waiting. Is anyone mentoring you into this space, or are you going it out alone? Would you have wished to be mentored?
Actually, as I was talking, I was thinking about mentorship. And right now, personally, where I'm at, I have people who are working with me now. Since I'm transitioning from a very safe space, I've served in the church leadership and all that, so that's a very safe space. Now I'm getting into this murky world of politics. So by God's grace, I've gotten a few people to work with me, and even through platforms like AYLF, whereby we have these forums whereby we meet, we chat, and we have our senior friends. So for me, it's a very eye-opening experience personally, and at least I've been there. But now for the rest of the people, that's what is lacking. We will never negate the place of the old people in our lives. Never. If right now we are given this country to run as young people, we can't run it. There's a place for the older folk because they have the experience. So we really need to tap. We have good leaders out there. Not everyone is a bad leader, but what we do, we usually identify with the bad ones, for clout, so that you can have, they say. But we have good leaders, people of integrity, people who've been in public service for many years and their record is straight. People who, have gone up the ranks. They started as maybe councillors, they went up the ranks. So we really need to tap into such people. For instance, maybe I can share the late Koinange, the MP for Kiambaa. So there's a day we were in Kigali for the prayer breakfast, and we just had a chat over coffee, and I learned a lot. And this is someone who used to sit in, the security committee in parliament, but he wouldn't go out there saying, mimi niko na namba ya Matiang'i hapa. He never said such things, and for me, that's a leader you can emulate, you can learn a lot from. So there's a place for mentorship, and this is my charge to all the young people. We really need the old people for us to succeed. You need the future is determined by the past, the history, the present, so that now we make the future great.
All right.
Yeah.
Ruth Bolo, you are in the political space. As a young woman in the political space, is there mentorship? Because we have there's a split in the gender conversation where if you're a young woman, you're no longer fit as a youth, and you're no longer fit as an older woman, so you're in between. So how's that mentorship like for a young woman in politics, and how can we better that?
Allow me to touch on the question you asked him before I answer this. There's a lot of mistrust in institutions because some are not allowed to run independently. And so what then begins to happen is me, who is being controlled by a certain faction, then feels that this organization or this institution is actually going through the same. And then the ripple effect is that there's a web of mistrust. And so the only cure to that is to allow them to actually be independent, and the procedure of those that are actually nominated into these positions then should be a very free and fair one. Not just free and fair in the books, but an actual free, fair and transparent one. Now to your question, I have been in the political space for about 5 years now. I joined formally at the age of 19 when I had just moved from, again, a very safe industry, because prior to that I was juggling real estate, and I was also just, I had my own fashion and events company at the time. So I was, very comfortable in the business space, but even there's politics. When you get to hear the board wants this and the executive director wants this, and it's there. But it's not as stringent as that, and as malicious as that in the political space. When I joined politics, the people who worked with me first were men, and they were young men. I came from a campaign trail of certain aspirants, because they had picked me to manage some sectors from the business space. And now when I moved into the national campaign, it was just in between the first two elections, I think, of 2017. And now I was moving from the online space of just tweeting and, from the previous years. And I joined a lobby group for a presidential candidate for men. And I was their chair. And so number one, these were men that were all experienced, because they had been there for some time and they were all older than me. But also two, it is there that I began to hear, she's definitely sleeping with them, or this and this is happening, And those same gentlemen are the ones who would be my buffers, because they then would say, you know, this is our home girl. This is, you know, and if there was anyone from outside the circle who would maybe throw hits on me or say malicious things, I would get to hear about it later. So I think mine was a unique case because I have heard of young women who have had a different case. But now transitioning to the party that I am in now, to KANU, I was definitely welcomed by women. The first group of people that welcomed me were young women, and they would ensure if there's any activity in the party, they would tag me along. They would even tell me late in the night, you need to be at this place by 6 a.m. in the morning. Are you okay? Do you have cab money? Are you able to get there? Do you have a red outfit? You know, just to make sure I understand the ropes. They would even go far enough and tell me, well, usiongeleshe ule vibaya, ule ni live wire. Because, you know, in the political space, you could be doing something right, but you just never know who you're stepping foot on, because I could be doing something that is maybe meant to be done by the Secretary General. And all of a sudden I'm in trouble, no one wants me. So they would caution me with such things. And so as a result, I am also very deliberate in ensuring that I mentor young women into joining the space, and I work with them. It's not enough to just tell young women, join the political space. Okay. No, you need to go far enough and tell them when you're going to the campaign trail, what are the do's and what are the don'ts. Okay. Go far enough in telling them when you're joining politics, you don't need to be on the podium. You could be a technocrat in the political space. You don't need to necessarily be having the mic. You could be poor at speech, but you're very good in writing. There's a place for you there as well. So there is that gap in between, because when you're in the youth league, then a lot of them will tell you, where end up a women league? In young men that, you know, don't have their space. You know, just sit unapigwa na wazee. But when you go to the women league, if you're 24, 25, you know, especially between before you get to the age of 28, a number of them will tell you, we're going to youth league, and especially if you're very aggressive, because the women equally don't have their space. This is the only turf they have to play. So they're feeling like you're coming into my space. And so one of the things that I know my party has done, I don't know about other political parties, it's ensure that in the youth congress, there has to be 50-50. Half of the positions need to go to men, half need to go to women. So in whatever way, when you know, people are being fielded and as you come, because when we are going for those elections or those nominations, if I want to be chairperson of maybe the KANU Youth Congress, I have my lineup. So in my lineup, I need to ensure that it's well balanced. So will he, if he has his lineup. And so what you find is that as people are being elected, then it's very well balanced. And that has really helped in ensuring that there are young women who are given their space in the youth leagues. And also the civil society has played a very big role in ensuring that that gap is closing in. Because what we risk having is an intergenerational crisis or a gap. If you look at my county, Homa Bay, the years between Phoebe Asio and Honorable Mil Mabona is 16 years. So for 16 years, Homa Bay County did not have a woman that was representing the issues of Homa Bay women. But now later on, when we actually have the first woman after Phoebe Asio, then we are seeing stories like fish for sex. Because there was no woman to actually ensure that there are viable solutions to the problems women are facing. And so civil society has played a very big role in not just capacity building, but in ensuring that political parties also have certain laws that incorporate these young women.
All right, thank you so much for that information. I'd like to go to the general conversations around how elections affect us. You know, sometimes we think it's a personal conversation around the politician. You know, they're the ones who are looking for these votes. It doesn't involve me at all. We don't know how bad it affects the country when the elections do not go the way they're supposed to go. And I mean, we know conversations around 2017. We know how important it is to transition smoothly. So I'd like to bring in Mr. Vimao. In terms of this electoral process and the transition that needs to be, I mean, almost seamless, as in an ideal situation we would anticipate for it to be. Painting a picture to our audience, what is the picture like for business in the country, for impact on employment, on wealth generation, when we do not have a seamless process, when we do not have peace during an election period?
Thank you. I think that's a very important question. The question is, what's in it for me as a youth, as a woman, as a man, as an old man, as a business person, as a laborer, as a farmer, as a fisherman? What is in it for me? I think the key issue is peace. All of us probably in the world, right? We value peace only when we lose it. When we have peace, we take it for granted. And I'm telling you one thing, we have amazing policemen, we have amazing security forces, but has anybody ever told them thank you for keeping the peace? No. We always try and bitch about them or talk negative about them when something goes wrong. But when they're doing a good job and there's peace and calm, it's not a time when we tell them, hey, thank you. It's the same as a doctor, right? You go to a doctor only when you're sick. But when you're happy and okay, you don't call the doctor and say, I just wanted to wish you. Probably that's something we need to start doing, right? Because we say we value peace. And really, look at today, Ukraine started off. The amount of, let's not call it earthquakes, the amount of earth shattering, people shattered there, it's crazy. Everything's just gone crazy. Now that is happening in Ukraine and Russia, but the impact on the world is massive. So economics, everything is being affected. Now let's take Kenya. In Kenya today, the perception of politics, the perception of elections in August is actually telling people, you know what, play it safe this year. Do not invest, do not do this, do not do that, do not change your jobs, do not seek another job because you never know what happens after. Now that's called fear, and fear of failure. And we must remove that. And I think this important point here is nothing untoward is going to happen, number one. Number two, a lot of talk, and I can say empty talk, right? And I can call it NATO, no action, talk only. Although NATO in Ukraine, Russia is different right now. But no action, talk only. A lot of people talk and start creating a fear psychosis in you. If I want to influence Mheshimiwa Emmanuel, who's standing for becoming an MCA, I can influence him in the wrong direction. Right? I can be a party man, whatever. I could be in Gano and say, this is going to happen. And again, a lot of these things are said casually. Try and see all these politicians who are opposing seriously. Call them to a dinner or to a lunch, and they'll all eat together and happily they'll say, yeah, those things we speak on the podium, but you know what, right now we're all friends. So really, as Kenyans, as youth, as women, as whoever we are, we must not think that, oh, it's going to be shattered. Therefore, as a farmer, I shouldn't say play it safe. I will not plant anything because you never know what happens. We need the food. We need all that to happen. And this is important. So the question you asked is, how important is peace? It is the most important. Now, peace is just having no insecurity. But insecurity can be in the mind. And this is what hate speech does. Hate speech becomes like, oh, ni kabila, ama ni hi, or whatever, or women, men, or you know, the haves and the have-nots. There's so much discrimination we can start doing. We split people. And I think the British taught us this. With due respect to the British, they actually taught us divide and rule. If two people are winning, divide them and then rule them. And that's your kingmakers in your universities, or kingmakers in politics, even in church, even in temples, even in politics, even in business. You said it right. Even in business, there is the kingmakers. And the kingmakers know how to control things. The divide and rule philosophy must not be used here. We must try and say, can we unite together and say, fine, we're all united on this one, let them play. Now, the politicians, and I'm saying budding politician here, they have a stage. When they get the stage, they will do their drama. I call it a drama. They do their drama and they actually act and talk differently based on who's listening to them, who's the gallery. And they play that game very well. As people in the gallery, sitting in the gallery, we've got to have, and I'm saying this to all our youth, all our women, all our leaders, we need to become more wary about all this and say, yes, they're doing their drama, that's an act. It's just like we see movies or dramas. They do their act, they have a role to play, they finish it off, they're back to normal. And this is going to happen. And therefore, why must I, as this tribe or that tribe or this youth or whatever, start attacking the other person and say, you are our enemies? No, the enemy is within. Let's take up that opportunity and say, guys, it's niwajibu wangu. It's my responsibility to make sure I am also an advocate of the peace. A lot of us delegate to the police and the security and the GSU and army and say, bring them in so that they can create peace. They help in creating peace. But all they do is separate the two warring parties. Can we not do that? Can youth leaders, and I challenge you as president of TUK, in your university, become a champion of Kenya Daima and say, yes, we are not going to be utilized or used by the politicians, with due respect to politicians. We are going to stand our ground and we're going to do it. Yes, you can go and vote. It's a secret ballot. You can vote for whoever you want. I don't think that anybody can rule on that. But be clear that we're not going to be unpeaceful. And I think that's more important, not being violent about it, not trying to hit somebody because something went wrong. It's again anger management. And Maureen, I'll put it to you, it's about managing expectations.
Yeah.
So let's say Mheshimiwa Emmanuel wins the election, he becomes the MCA. The question we should ask is, what's going to change for me as youth or women when you become MCA? I think that's the key question to ask.
True.
So these are the questions that we probably need to interrogate our own politicians. As many as they're standing, we must encourage them and start becoming leaders. Now, if you become the president of this country, you are not president of a party or a president of a tribe. You're the president of the entire country. I think this is where Wajibu Wangu comes in and say, look, we must take responsibility, because if I become MCA, I'm not only for youth, like you said very nicely, you are there for everyone. So young, old, doesn't matter. I think the key issue is Google gives us a lot of knowledge, but wisdom is what we must have. And I think this is where, if we all have the wisdom to say, yeah, this guy is now, or this politician is trying to lead me astray, let's do corrective action. And really, we can all come together, hold hands and do it. Okay. At the end of the day, we're all one.
True, I couldn't agree more. I mean, in the end of the day, we're all Kenyans. And in the end of the day, this conversation for us goes all the way to the future, and will also affect our children and the children of our children. Ruth Bolo, in this conversation around peace, what are political parties doing in their space to ensure that as we transition into the electioneering period, which we see, I mean, primaries will be held in April, and with the new elections bill, if you have missed out on a position, you're not allowed to go as an independent candidate. We are foreseeing a lot of things that might happen in that space. What are you deliberately doing in your space to ensure that that transition is being felt by your members, or that your members are aware as a form of civic engagement that these are the alternative dispute resolutions? You know, how are you engaging your members to ensure that this transition, for political parties speaking for your own party, or even speaking with, based on your interaction with other political parties?
Allow me to start by telling you what Mr. Vimal said really hit me about at what point we appreciate peace. I was leaving the office one late evening, not so long ago, and I saw some beautiful houses. I said, these houses are beautiful, but most of them look empty. And truly, COVID really hit people, because the number of houses even in our area that are empty. And someone I was with in the car said, no, these are government houses. They are very affordable, but people don't move in them because when election violence begins, it starts from here. And I said, what? It's a beautiful street, well lit, the road has been made, the houses are beautiful. And I was like, what do you mean? And the thing with that is that even if it's not true, I already have a fear, like he said. I cannot even think about moving in that area, because I will be thinking about what if, and so that really hit me. And as a result, I think it's at that point that I have been intentional in going out to ensure that I also make sure I speak about it in whatever spaces I will be in. Because before, I think it was more of the conversation is happening, I have been invited into the conversation, hey, let's have that conversation because it's important. But now it is, did I remember to mention it in that conversation, you know? And so, as political parties, we do have laws that guide, or rather ensure that our players, especially within the nomination period, are not violent. If your supporters have been found to be violent, then you cannot proceed after the party primaries. If you have the ticket and there is evidence that you were involved, then it goes to the second person who was in line. Now that is in two ways. It is good on books, but the implementation of it, because we've seen in certain areas where people have been campaigning that I will wear Mr. Peter's t-shirts, or my campaign supporters will wear them, and they will do the absolute unimaginable things. But what has actually helped is the programs that are being done directly with the influencers on the ground. And that's why I think when we began, I asked Peter, why is it that people are now working with youth leaders, women leaders at the grassroots level, bunge la mwananchi, as opposed to the student leaders and these sectoral leaders. It is because that as a young person, even as Ruth, who is in a political party, I am strong because of those who have helped me in my community. And my community could be, people from Homa Bay, or people from Nairobi, or people, or women, or And so when I have conversations with them, it doesn't matter what I say on the podium, because they will say, unajua nafanya tu hiyo ndio waone, lakini si unakumbuka Kenya alisema msionekane mmefanya hii na hii. You understand? Because then they believe we've had that intimate conversation about it. And when he was speaking, I was just thinking, how can we have in the previous election what we did and what we've been doing with Youth Voice for Peace K since last year is ensuring that this conversation, we have influential leaders who have this conversation on video or through poetry or whatever it is, but in the very informal places. Yeah. So I could be sitting in a bar, a sports bar, where people get to hear this, and there could be, something that's just passing down there. And so as I am drinking, or as we are having this casual conversation, then I get to see that. So even if I was getting angry at what you're saying about my aspirant, then I realize, what, at the end of the day, if you're my neighbor, the time when I get sick, it's you who will come and fundraise it for me. So we need to have these conversations in the very informal places, in where people are at, because then the message gets heard. When we sit here, I know Peter, and I know, as a politician, I'm going to need the students from technical university, so I'm not going to be the one to attack him, but I'm going to get someone from my grassroots area to go and do the job for me. But if that person has seen that message, has heard it from him who is maybe a student leader, or from my border fraternity, then they're not going to do it, because it's more intimate and it's more relatable. Okay. So there's only so much we can do as political parties, but if I am being very honest, the work that is really being done is by civil society, one, and two, by individual, or rather by individual youth leaders, individual women, individual, caucus leaders. That has really made a big impact, because just to wrap up, I saw one of the videos we did when we were advocating for the peace during this period last year, because it's an initiative that we started last year. There was a whole conversation about it, and someone moved in to say that they have recovered from cancer, and when they went through it early last year, it was her community that did it. And so when one of her children, one of her children's friends in that estate, they live in a gated community, came to tell them, my mom said people from your area like this and like this, because you will vote for this and this person. She picked up her phone and called and said, so my child, your child who is my child's friend, has said you said this. But last year you were cooking for me when I had guests and I was unaware. You didn't see me as this affiliation. True. What's happening? Yeah. And as a result, every quarter they have a breakfast as a gated community. So we need to have these conversations beyond ourselves.
That is very true. And I'd like for you to say something, 10 seconds, about this initiative you're involved in called the People Dialogue Festival. That is an informal way of conversations that you're bringing politicians and the people on the table. Can you tell us a little bit of that?
Yes. So for a very long time, we've not had dialogue as a country. We've not had cross-sectoral dialogue. So what happens is, number one, for example, in the political space, when we want to communicate, it's a one-way conversation. So I will go to the rally and I will dance and I will shout, but you don't give me feedback. You're not able to ask me. So you say you want to do 7 things for me. How are you going to do it? How are you going to fundraise for it? We don't get to ask questions. Number 2 is there seems to be a wide gap between the business community, for example, and the political space. I use the word seemed and highlighted because that's not true. A number of politicians I know are getting funded by the business community. At the same time, the business community gets greatly affected by the actions of those in the political space. And so you realize that all these sectors are intertwined, the health, fraternity, all of them. And so what the People Dialogue Festival is doing is that it's giving us a podium for all leaders to be able to have this conversation. This is going to be, I think, the 4th edition, because it started in 2019. And we have the mic passing around. We've had people like Honorable Kivuta Kibwana sit in the crowd. We've had people like Honorable Martha Karua sit there and they're able to ask each other very honest questions.
Yeah.
And me as a voter or as a common wananchi, I can easily ask, okay, so this is what you said in parliament. Is it how you truly feel? Why can't you use this approach instead? Okay, you say that you want to do unemployment and I've had your approach. Why don't you do this instead?
Okay.
And so it's basically just a setup or a framework where we are able to have a conversation.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Mheshimiwa, as an aspirant, we know aspirants have interests, and sometimes interests supersede common goods. So as an aspirant, what is your initiative towards ensuring that the people that support you do it in a manner likely to suggest that peace is important, or do it peacefully, not necessarily suggesting it,
Yeah.
or do it peacefully, or how can you encourage them to support you in ways that you would encourage as an individual based on your personal values?
Well, thank you very much for that question. First of all, the idea I have and the approach I'm taking to this whole political territory is very different. You know, we are used to people paying hooligans to campaign for them. And for instance, this Sunday I'll be officially launching my bid and going to the ground with young people. So I've mobilized a lot of volunteers, and these are young people who I'm not even paying anything. They're just coming on board, and this is a different way of doing politics. People are used to people making noise, maybe on trucks. They come, shout, "We Moshimiwa," and the van just passes.
Yes.
But for us, we want to engage in in a conversation. As she's also, there's an aspect of accountability. I want to be a leader of I belong there. I live there. For instance, I don't know if Kenyans know, but all the MCAs should be living where they represent.
Exactly.
So personally for me, there's that aspect of accountability and responsibilities. So when I'm accountable to the people I'm leading, definitely my policies, they'll actually buy into that which I'm pushing. They'll buy into my values because they'll see. For instance, I'm someone who is really against violence and all that. So they'll be like, at least we have someone who we've seen, and also they've seen my track record, for instance, in the place I've served in the church setting. So there's an example to follow. So it springs out from the leader to the people and back to the leader, because at the end of the day, they'll hold me accountable.
And it's visible. It's almost as if it's what you do more than what you say. So
Yes.
You can see your actions. We have an online audience.
Yeah.
And we have a few questions that they have shared up to us. We have a few minutes to end, so we will just ask it across the panel. And one of them is asking, Mr. Duncan Mochama is asking, what is our role as youth leaders to sensitize our fellow youth to be engaged? So this I can give to Peter. What is your role to sensitize youth leaders? What is our role as youth leaders to sensitize our fellow youth to be engaged?
I think that should be a question from a university student, if I'm not wrong. Then, what is our role as youth leaders? First of all, or you as a youth leader, your role is to give directions to the youths and make them understand where they should be and where their interests are catered for.
Okay.
Then, by so doing, you will find yourself talking to them in a certain perspective. In a certain perspective that they should now go out. The only way you can get that space in the political world is through having the bullet, and the bullet is the vote. So you cannot be telling them we need to vote this kind of a person, and you have not told them to go have a vote.
Okay.
To go have a voter's card.
So your role is to, ensure that at least they're registered as voters, so they can take up the mandate, visibly through the process.
Thank you very much. That is it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. We have another question. I think this will go to Vimal. Do employers have a role in all this, or professionalism does not have space for this? So I don't know in which context, but do employers have a role in I mean, this sensitization process, you know, sometimes professionalism is, we get sensitization around work and your role as in your job or in your area. We have political conversations in space, in workspaces where we tell people it's important for you as an individual working for us to ensure that there's peace.
So I think, yeah, that's a very good question, actually. A lot of employers would shy away from this sort of a thing and say, look, that's not our business, that's your individual responsibility. But if I look at it objectively, I think it's a very good question to ask. It's not about the employer saying that, you know, because I'm employing you, you have to vote for my party. I think that's a wrong thing to do, number one. Number two, it should be saying that, yes, have you registered? Are you going to vote or not? Because that's a stand you take, rather than implicate them into this party or that party. Now, a lot of times, and I think there's this whole thing about if the employer says it from their side and say, you've got to do this, and if they know their affiliation, people will misread it and say, oh, hang on, this employer is now telling us to go to this party or vote for this person, and that's the wrong lead. I think more important should be that employers should take it as wajib wetu to say, guys, register, there should be no fear, number one. Number two, this whole thing about peace and violence, it doesn't come before elections. It comes when the results are announced and somebody has either won or they're lost. Now, the one who wins goes and shouts a big time about it, we won, and then look down upon the other people. And the people who lose are the ones who actually create this sort of a problem. And that's because of this whole thing about I'm a hero, whatnot. When we go and see football games, the best teams can even win, or they can lose, or they can have a draw. And there that sportsman spirit is available because they're, okay, fine, we'll try better next time because we lost this time. And the goals are very clear. It should be the same thing that's being used here. So even employers must be able to educate all their people across to say, guys, win or lose is not important, but make that vote.
Thank you so much for that. We have a comment from Roslyn Odede who says, as young people, peace is our responsibility to keep. It can't be the other person's problem. We are all responsible, regardless of our diversity and political ideologies. Hashtag unity in diversity. So I think, Roslyn, that's a very, I mean, that statement alone speaks for itself. And I mean, this conversation can go on and on, but I'd like for us to end with just closing words of wisdom. We're speaking to an audience that would like to hear what are the things that we in our spaces would like for them to do, not only in this electioneering period, but to add to the things that are going on in this country. So I'd like for us to just go around and do a round of closing statements. But from my perspective from this conversation is we need to continue to talk more, because the more we talk, the more we break down the conversation more, the more we understand from different perspectives. So Peter,
yes,
maybe you could just go first in your closing statement.
Thank you very much. I would like to start by saying that as a leader, you have two roles. The first role is to own a problem. Just own it. Just own it. Say, this is my default. From there, the last role is to say thank you to the people who helped you to solve the problem. In between the two roles is servant leadership. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that.
Advocate and practice for peace. Come and have a dialogue at the People's Dialogue Festival. Make sure you vote, not just in party primaries, but at general elections. And hey, become a current party member.
Oh, wow. Maybe I will go to Mheshimiwa just because of...
I'll officially announce on Sunday my party anyway. But my party in short would be, this is just the young people. We are 8 years to achieving Vision 2030. And one thing I learned is that Vision 2030, is, the goals are set by the manifesto of the ruling party at the moment. And that's why we have, derailed in some aspects of the same. So this is my challenge to young people. Go out there, research, know more about your country, read the Constitution, because at the end of the day, I will make noise on that podium, but when I see your foolishness, I maximize on that and your ignorance. So kindly, step up and step out.
Thank you so much for that. Mr.
Thank you. I think very interesting dialogue. What I would say is very simply, there is a leader inside every one of us and every one of you. You can't just say because he's got position power, he's got president of TK or whatever, he's got power. No. There is power in every single person, every one of us, every one of you sitting out there listening to this. So do not wait for some leader and say, that's the other leader I listen to. There's a leader inside you. Arouse that leader to say, now, ni wajibu wangu. I will take that responsibility and I will make sure that I will not do the wrong things. Even if I have 5 or 6 peer pressure friends who peer pressure me to say, let's go this way, let's go that way, and that becomes group behavior, I will still stand by what I want, what I need, number one. Number two, I think Kenya Daima is something that we're gonna launch soon, and we've launched already. But the point is, this is bringing the religious bodies together, civil society together, the business people together, the youth leadership organizations together, the media. We're bringing together a lot of the diplomatic forces so that everybody who's not in government is coming together to say, me, I'm going to look at the values. Ni wajibu wangu, mimi ni Mkenya daima. So I think that's important to set that pride in you. Elections will come and go. This is not the first time. You'll still have 10 more elections to go through in your 50, 60, 100 years, whatever you've got to live. And I think every 5 years we cannot say, let's put a standstill, let's stop the country, and let's look at different things. I think the issue is elections come and go. These things will come and go. We've got to grow out of this whole syndrome where 1 year before election we play it safe. We start saying, hey, let's wait and see what happens. 1 year after we're saying, let's see what they do. And I think in that process we're losing out a lot. And we must make this a normal process that in the morning you go, you voted, in the afternoon you're back to work, you're starting on, and things go on. Vision 2030 is something that was adopted as Kenya, right? So Vision 2030 was adopted so that every 5 years you get a new CEO to make that vision a reality. So the goal and the vision of the country is not going to shift and change. So what changes with elections? Frankly, if I look at one more thing, and Maureen, you allow me some time, all the political parties, any of them, whatever name you give them, are branded. Ideologically, all of them are agreeing towards a vision of prosperity for Kenyans. They're talking about, jobs and everything else. It's the same language. Only it's about who sits there. So that's your wajibu yako, ni wajibu wangu, to say whom do I bring there, and that's where the leadership quality in the person. Not about the partyism, but in the person. Is this the right person? It could be an independent party too. If the right people come in, it's not a problem. I was talking to Emmanuel earlier. We have very good policies in this country. It's only the implementation, that's the wrong people take up. And therefore, take it in your hands. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And I am pleased to have been able to moderate this session. In my closing statements, what I have learned from this conversation is it's important to speak truth to power. It's important for peaceful transition in order for us to ensure that we have a peaceful economic growth. And ni wajibu wangu, ni wajibu wako, ni wajibu wetu. So let's take responsibility for the things that are happening in this country. Thank you very much for joining us, and we look forward to having these conversations more often with you. God bless you. And thank you.